Hello, Garrett County. I am Thomas George, family nurse practitioner, doctor of nursing practice, and expert on obesity. And I'm here today at Ma and Pa's Country Store on 560, just south of Oakland. And wow, what a great place. Brand new building with a Western theme that has local everything from tomatoes to milk, ice cream, and even some local treats, some creations that Randy, one of the owners here, has even crafted for some of the kids. So it's a special place with great views and great produce, great meats too, because they're featuring some of the beef from their farm. So today I'm going to feature a few things we found at the farmer's market this last week. And when I was there, I said, Latin flair. I was thinking these peppers, and I already had a vision for what it would be. Because last week we went to the Mediterranean and we did a Middle Eastern salad with some lemon garlic grilled chicken. And I thought we can change this theme. We'll use a little bit of the Latin American influence. So we're going to have a pico de gallo, a salad that's made with tomatoes, onions, lemon and lime, cilantro, and that's going to be a condiment for a grilled flank steak. Flank steak, you say? Well, this is a tough piece of meat, and if you cook it the wrong way, you'll never eat it again because you'll be chewing for days. It's from the plate, the abdomen of the cow, and it comes down from the lower. You have the skirt here, and you have the flank steak here. It's often used for fajitas. It doesn't have a lot of fat, but it has a lot of flavor, and I'm marinating it in something called mojo criollo. That sounds fun, right? It's actually a marinade with a fruity olive oil, garlic, citrus, some fresh oregano, and some lime juice. We don't want to do it too long because it'll make the meat tough. So a couple hours before the cook, you want to have this in the marinade. So that's what we're doing there. I'm also going to talk about a drink called agua fresca. Sounds crazy, but it is good. What's crazy about it is it's made with cucumbers. Cucumbers, lime, a non-calorie sweetener, and a little bit of a sprig of mint to make it tasty. And if you wanted to make a mojito, this would be an exotic mojito. We'll talk a little bit about charro beans and how to cook these great things. So stay tuned and we'll get cooking. Okay, so let's talk about the order of operations here. One of the things I like to do the night before that I make this meal, I pickle some onions. Now, take a look at these. These onions have been pickled in nothing more than salt, citrus from the lime, and a little bit of a locally resourced chili pepper from the Serrano family. When they sit overnight like that, they get a little wilted, a little pickled, and they give a lovely bite to your tacos that we'll be making today. So I'm going to test these. Who would ever do this? To try an onion that's been soaking in lime, but I want to make sure the salt is right. What ends up happening, the lime takes away the bite of the onion. The salt draws up some of the onion juice. The pepper gives it a little bit of heat. So that was one onion sliced thinly with about a half teaspoon of salt. And I used one of these because they were spicy, and enough lime juice to cover the onions to the top. Put it in your fridge, let it sit, stir it every once in a while, and when you put that on top of a taco, your taste buds will go, wow, and you'll like it. Okay, this is one of my favorite cooking tools, the Ziploc bag. Inside here is a flank steak. Like I said, this is a muscle that comes from the plate of the animal, and the flank is lower down on the abdomen on the cow. It's tough, it doesn't have a lot of fat, but it has a lot of great beef flavor. So what I do to get a little fat and a little more flavor in here, but to also tenderize it, is I took 1/4 cup of olive oil, 1/4 cup of lime juice, some fresh oregano, some garlic, salt and pepper to taste with some red pepper flakes, mixed it all up, and I'm coating the meat in this bag, getting the air out of it, and then I keep it in the fridge for a couple of hours and just turn it over to make sure that marinade is getting all over the meat. Now, because there is acid in your citrus, if you leave the marinade on too long, it'll actually make this meat tough. So 2 to 3 hours is all it takes to get really good flavor. You'll get the garlic, you'll get the lime, you'll get the salt and pepper, but most of all, you'll get this flavor with a little bit of cumin. That's the secret ingredient. Cumin is one of the spices in Latin American cuisine that tastes like the chili powder with a little bit of kick. We don't want too much, only about 1/4 to a half teaspoon, but that is the secret ingredient here with one other thing, bitter orange. We don't have bitter oranges up here, but you can use a regular orange, a blood orange, and what I did was the juice of one orange along with the lime to give it a little citrus kick. Okay, so we have a couple things going. We have onions that are pickling, meat that's marinating, and now we're going to make a salad called pico de gallo. And it's a colorful salad that includes these lovely red onions. These are from the farmer's market this week. And this is about 2 cups or 1 medium to large size onion diced finely. And we're going to put those in here along with about 1.5 pounds of local tomatoes that have been chopped and seeded. So these are basically just the meat of the tomato, and it's been diced as well. But before I do that, I'm glad that didn't come out. We're going to do something else, because you know how I feel about onions. I like them, but I like to tame them a little bit. One of the ways we'll tame these onions are with salt, which will draw moisture out of the onions, and then our friend citrus. There's a theme this week. Last week it was lemons. This week it's limes, and we want just enough lime to cover these onions, because as the salt draws moisture out, we're going to have flavor, but we're also going to have tamer onions. So I'm just going to give these a squeeze. Nice thing about most of these limes, I seldom see seeds in them. So I'm going to give just a good squeeze. I can see that I'll need 1 more lime. We're going to let this lime juice and salt work on the onions, and we're going to put our other ingredients on top. And then we'll stir it later, because those onions will be just a little less bite and much more flavor. So that's all about we need here 2 limes worth of juice. Now we're going to give that a quick stir. The salt is in there, and what we're doing is coating these onions with that lime juice. So there's what we have. Onions, I have 1 straggler tomato in there, a little bit of salt. Now those onions are going to sit in the bottom with this lime juice. And then I'm going to take the 1.5 pounds of tomatoes that have been diced and seeded and put those in there as well. And I packed them in there to get them in the jar today. And I'm just going to let those sit on top. And then we're going to put some cilantro. So at the farmer's market, I got some cilantro. And one of the things you want to do when you're storing cilantro is keep it inside either a moist paper towel or a bag with a little bit of water, because it will dry out. Cilantro is also known as coriander. So when this coriander grows, it'll flower, and that seed is the coriander seed. So a lot of people didn't realize that. So you can do this plant in your garden. It'll self-seed every year, and you can collect those seeds, use them for seasonings, but you can also use them for planting next year's crop. Now when I plant cilantro, I like to plant it every week, so I can always go out and chop the tops, keep it from blooming too quickly. With this, much like the parsley that we used for last week, we're going to leave part of the stem, but not the tough base stem. So what I'll do is pull all of the leaves up together, chop the stems off, give this a rough chop, and put in with our salad. Then I'll give it a toss, because just like the mint in last week's salad, the cilantro can go a little limp if we don't put some citrus on it. So the acid will keep it fresh and vibrant. All right, so when we were at the farmer's market, I met some pretty awesome people, the Lances, the Lilies, the Neggies, and more. And I looked at corn and peppers and that beautiful cauliflower, but this pepper intrigued me. It's new to me. So anytime I have a new pepper, I kind of want to do a little exploration. Remember we talked about where that shoulder of the pepper is. If I cut across there, I'll be able to get those seeds out, and it's inside the seeds in the white part of the pepper. That's where most of the heat is carried. But I'm going to do a little investigation. I'm going to make a thin slice that includes the white part where all the oleoresins are. Those are the volatiles that make this hot. I'm going to smell it. I can usually smell if something's hot, and I can smell it. This has got a pepper bite that I know when I put this in my mouth. Probably not a good decision, but let's see. That's hot. My mouth is burning, my tongue's on fire, and I know that this pepper for most people will probably more than they can handle. But I'm going to put it in my salsa. To tame it down, I will cut these peppers and the vein inside there, and I'll give this a fine mince so you never get one big bite in your mouth. But that's one of the things you can do with peppers to see how spicy they are. Make a smaller cut than I did. Put it in your mouth and see what the burn is. It won't kill you, unless it's a Reaper, but that's not a Reaper. I'm gonna get some water and I'll be right back. I'm ready. Okay, so I tasted that pepper. It is pretty peppery, so for those folks that don't like spicy foods, I'm gonna cut the little veins out of there and the seeds, Now what I'm going to do is using my knife, again remember I hold the knife with my thumb and my forefinger at the base of the blade, my other 3 fingers here, and I'm going to curl my knuckles in to give a guide for my knife so I don't cut my fingers. And then I'm just going to go thinly like this. The skin of this pepper is pretty firm, so I'm going to get very small slices, similar to a julienne here, and I'm going to get those, then go against the perpendicular there to get a small dice. That means we won't get a big bite of pepper, but we'll have a small amount of pepper interspersed throughout the salad. And I'll just prep this up now. Okay, so we have a very small dice on those peppers. Add those to the tomatoes and the onions that are soaking in there with the lime. I'm going to add this cilantro to the mix as well. Some people don't like cilantro and they ask, can you put something like parsley in here? Normally I would say yes, but in this recipe, it almost always calls for cilantro. So if you need to omit it, do it. It has a good flavor just by itself, but I think cilantro adds that authentic Latin American spice and flavor, and just this sharp little green bite to the background of the acid and other things that are in here, like the tomatoes, the peppers, the onions. And look what happens as I start stirring that all together. Much like our Mediterranean salad last week, this has just a lot of pop, a little bit of bite from the peppers. And if you want to add more bite, you can put another pepper or 2 in there, or you can put them on the side with a little bit of lime juice and serve those for those people that like to take the spice level up another notch. But look at that. I can smell everything that's in there, and you'll notice what's missing from last week's salad was garlic, and this week no garlic in here. This is just lime, onions, peppers, tomatoes, cilantro. Now I'm going to hit it with a little bit of salt and pepper, adjust for flavor, and see if we need anything else, like trucks. It'd be nice if those trucks stopped to see what was going on. We could sell them some ice cream or some beef, or we could have them try the peppers, locally grown, local fire. So I don't know how we're doing on, oh my goodness, it's sneaking in there. So I know I probably have to put it together. Okay. In the beginning, I didn't tell you about one of the secrets of today. It's about the technique of making something that you probably take for granted, but they're delicious when you make them from scratch. And it's something you get the whole family involved in, or friends and family when they come over to eat. It's the tortilla. Now in here is a corn flour, but it's called masa harina. That's not how they say it in Spanish because the H is silent. Masa harina is what it means, literally dough flour. This is a corn flour that's made not from the corn that's growing in the field out here, but the type of corn that that forms hominy, or the thing that makes grits. But then this white hard kernel corn is soaked and cooked in something called calcium hydroxide lime, not the citrus lime, but the chemical lime. And it denatures some of the proteins inside the corn and imparts a sour taste. So a true corn tortilla should have a slight sourness, but the way it comes apart, sometimes from being too dry, I just had to wave, so I saw a wave, so I just waved back. When you're out in the country, you should wave. If you don't, it's kind of rude, so I'm just going to start waving to everybody. I didn't get a wave there. They're not from here. I noticed the license plate, not from here. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, we get 2 cups of flour. And this is not so much a science as is an art. With some baking, it's very precise, but this has to do everything to do with ambient humidity, temperature, and moisture. So we're going to add 2 cups to start, and that goes right into the bowl. And then I'm going to add warm water. This is warm filtered water that might be a little too hot for me at the moment, but I'm going to start with about 1.5 cups. And we're going to keep working this until we get a pliable dough that's something like Play-Doh. And once we do, we're going to let this rest so that the moisture carries throughout all of the corn. Then we're going to make it into about a golf ball size ball, and we're going to put it right in here. A tortilla press. We're going to put it in here, squish it down, and we're going to cook these tortillas on a cast iron skillet, and you'll see how simple it is to do. So I'll get going on this, and when I get back, we'll have some dough to press. Okay, you might be wondering, why am I wearing gloves? I mean, maybe I should have used them when I was cutting those spicy peppers and not touching my eye and maybe crying because they're so hot. I'm wearing gloves today because if you notice, I'm kind of a furry mammal, and fur belongs on our pets, not on our foods. When you're kneading dough and you're a guy that might have a little extra hair, be kind to your guests. Don't feed them your fur. Okay, so I'm looking at this dough now, and I'm going to knead this. Now, it's not like kneading dough that has gluten. There's no gluten in here. What I'm doing is seeing the moisture. It should stick together like Play-Doh. It should be pliable. It shouldn't be too tacky. So right now, it's not sticking to my glove. That's the consistency we want it to be. I'm going to let this rest in the bowl for about 10 to 20 minutes, and then we'll form it into balls that we can press into tortillas. Okay, so look at this dough. It's pliable, it's bendy, but if it gets too dry, you'll have tortillas that can actually get dry and fall apart. So what I'm going to do to portion these out, I'm thinking that I'm going to get at least 12, possibly 16 tortillas out of here. So I'm going to make a log. I'm going to grab my knife, and I'm going to start portioning these out. So I start in the middle, and then I go to the middle again, and then I'm going to go I'm going to go into thirds. Okay, fractions. I heard that about 5 out of 4 Americans don't like fractions. Nevertheless, we're going to do them. We're getting a cast iron skillet going. That one is not going to be eaten, but this one will. The whole idea is to portion things into something about roughly ping pong ball or golf ball size. But what I'm not going to do is put it right on this cast iron presser. Stay tuned and I'll show you the trick to keep these from sticking. So I told you one of the secrets to keep your dough from sticking to your press is my friend, the kitchen tool, the plastic bag. And I'm going to use a knife. You could also use the scissors. The big thing here is I want to find this long edge here and just cut it so that I'm going right down the side seam. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and I'm going to leave one end intact, and by doing so, I have now this cool little flipper that I'm going to put inside here, put my dough, press it, it's not going to stick, and I can wash this and reuse it because I want to save money and be good to our environment, and this will last a long time. I have one at my other house that's lasting me about a year. So I've got the skillet hot. You can see there's just a little bit of smoke out of here. I want it to be at least medium to medium high. I've got my golf ball of masa harina dough. I'm going to put it inside my press about 2/3 of the way back. I'm going to cover it with my plastic, and this is simple physics. Archimedes said something along the lines, give me a long enough lever and I'll move the world. Well, this lever is just moving dough. But I hope the dough in the tortilla moves you to try this recipe because it's delicious. This is a simple tortilla. All it's meant to do is carry our grilled meat from later on. So after I press this down, I'm not going too crazy here. I should have a nice round piece. This is where the proof is in the pudding. If I separate, it shouldn't stick, and voila, it does not stick. Then I should be able to peel it this way and slap it into a hot skillet. And if you can see in the skillet, you'll see that it's starting to bubble a little bit. We're going to keep it in there for about a minute on each side, and then we'll flip it, and then we'll put it in this very fancy tortilla holder. Okay, so this last tortilla is getting ready to come off here. And just look how nice they come in here. The steam released when they're in the storage here will make them a little more soft and supple. Now I've got the meat. And so what I'm going to do is get our skillet hot, like medium to medium high. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry some of the marinade off of the meat, because we don't want this to boil, we want it to sizzle. So I'm going to dry this meat off. I'm going to reserve as much of that liquid that we've marinated in. You'll see what I do with that after the meat's done cooking. But the idea here is to get this seared off so we can have a nice brown caramelized surface of the meat. We're going to cook this to medium rare to medium. We want it right in between there. So I'm going to try to cook this to about 130 degrees inside temperature, pull it out, let it rest for about 5 minutes, and then it should be a perfect medium rare to medium. And we'll slice this very thinly, put it on top of our fresh made tortillas and some pico de gallo, and see what your mouth thinks about that. All right, so I've taken the flank steak outside of the marinade, dried it off. We want the meat surface to be dry. I'm going to finish it with a little bit of black pepper. You can see that there are some pieces of garlic and seasoning still on the meat from the marinade. That's okay. We just want that surface to be dry. I'm going to salt it. And you notice on TV when those folks salt from way up here, you maybe even seen the guy that does the salt off his arm. There's a reason. When you do it up high like this, you can see where everything's going. I'm outside, so I can also make a mess, but I want to see where it's going to make sure I have a nice even coat. So I'm going to flip that over and do the same thing on the other side. And then of course, because there's raw meat on here, I will clean this up before we do anything else. And we're going to get this into our skillet, which right now I have on medium-high heat. I'm going to add avocado oil. And this is avocado oil. I like this. I added a little bit of avocado oil to the skillet because avocado oil also has a great flavor, also has a high flash point, so this won't burn like an olive oil might at this temperature. I want this pan to be smoking hot, which you can see it is now, and I'm going to lay this in here, making sure the oil's coating the bottom of the pan. I'm going to lay it away from me. I want to hear that sizzle. I want to see that steam rising, and I'm going to let this sit for about 3 to 5 minutes. Then we'll flip it. I'm going to get a thermometer. I'll place it in the fattest part of the meat, and we will cook it and maybe reduce the temperature if needed to get to that perfect 130 Fahrenheit center temperature. So next time you see me, we'll be flipping some meat. So I know you can hear it. That means it's a hot skillet, but I want you to see it. There's some color that's taking place here. It's getting nice and brown in this cast iron skillet. Now, because the marinade has orange juice and lime juice, it doesn't have a high sugar content, but it has enough that it will caramelize and brown. So that's why we don't want to go too hot with our temperature. The same way we also don't want to go too low, because if we have too much liquid in there or too low of a temperature, we'll actually be boiling the meat instead of searing this meat. By searing it on the outside, we're going to keep all those juices inside, which will keep this moist, flavorful, and delicious. Sometimes life is unpredictable, so in between filming here, the steak actually got cooked to 130 degrees, and now it's resting on top of the surface with aluminum foil. And you can see, I don't know if you can video in on here, it went from 130 and it's creeping up to like 133, 134. What I'm going to do now is so that we don't waste any of this wonderful liquid. Now remember, this has oil in it, which is good, but it also has raw meat in it. So I'm going to add it to our already hot skillet. You're going to hear it, see it. And then what I'm going to do is increase the heat, boil off some of the liquids in there. I'm smelling the citrus, the orange that's in there, the garlic. I'm going to turn up the heat on this induction plate. And to that, we're going to add some lovely sliced onions and peppers. And this will go as a cooked complement to our meat, which we'll slice and serve on our tortillas. Coming to you next, the finished product. Okay, many of you probably have heard of Instapots and all these other weird cookers. Well, I have one. And a couple times a month, I'll make a big bunch of beans. And I'll put them in jars and freeze them, thaw them out the night before, and now I'm putting them into my hot skillet where I've sauteed a few peppers and onions to go along with our meat that's now resting and fully at temperature. It's about 142 degrees now, and you can see that our meat is lovely. It's browned on the outside. It's going to be a medium rare to medium inside. We're going to slice this up, serve it on our tortillas with our fresh pico de gallo and a drink called Aqua Fresca made out of some pepinos, cucumbers, a little bit of lime, some sweetener, and a hint of mint. See you in 2 minutes. Okay, so this is the moment I've been waiting for. It is the cook on the meat. You can see that we've got a good sear on this meat, so that's going to keep the moisture inside there. The flank doesn't have a lot of fat, but it has a lot of flavor. A lot of that was added from the marinade with garlic and citrus. Also a little bit of fresh oregano. But when we cut this, you'll see the strands of the meat, the fibers are going this way. We want to cut against the grain. That way we won't be chewing on jerky. Because this is a tougher cut of meat, we're going to slice this very thinly. We're going to put it on top of our tortilla, top it with this wonderful pico de gallo, the pickled onions. And then here you can see we've got some charro beans. Charro beans are pinto beans with bacon, peppers, onions, garlic, and this is like the cowboys of Mexico. This is their beans, an homage to them. So we'll put this all together on a plate and see how it tastes. This is it. It is a tougher piece of meat, but when you slice it thin, you get all that flavor, you get the salt, you get the citrus. I cannot wait to see how that tastes with that pico de gallo. So let me get a tortilla, put it together, and you can have a bite. Okay, so fresh tortillas, you can see they're nice and bendy. They're not breaking apart. Sometimes the store-bought tortillas will do. And if you want to reheat them in the microwave, you just put a little wet paper towel, damp, not wet, squeeze the water out, put it over the top, 30 seconds at a time until they're warm. I'm going to take some of this thinly sliced beef. I like mine a little closer to the medium rare side, so I'm going to go towards the middle. Then I'm going to take some of this lovely pico de gallo right on top, just like that. And then a couple of those pickled onions. Look at the color on those onions. These onions have been bathing in a little bit of lime juice and some serrano chilies. And I could stop right here, but I think maybe, you know, you could put some cheese on here. You could put some cilantro if you wanted to chop it on top. We also have some fresh tomatoes. These green tomatoes from our friends at the Lily's, these look green, but they're sweet. Oh my goodness, they're sweet, they're tart. He's gonna turn around and come back for this. I know, he saw it. Yes, there's a lot of traffic here, if you couldn't tell. They've heard about the food and the ice cream. But instead of putting anything else on here, I'm gonna do what you should never do when you're filming live, is that I'm gonna take a bite. And this is gonna be messy because this meat, I'm not cutting it with a fork. I'm just gonna bite into this, and we might have to cut because we don't know what'll happen, but I wanna see what these flavors are like. Every good meal deserves a good drink, and this drink is agua fresca de pepino. It's supposedly fresh water with cucumber, and that's exactly what this is. 3 cucumbers that have been seeded and peeled, blended with fresh filtered water, lime juice, a little bit of sweetener that I use stevia, so this doesn't have high calories, and it's mixed with about 6 cups of water, and there'll be some recipes down below. But look at the lovely color that comes out of this, and how you want to finish this drink right before you serve it is with just a little fresh lime and a piece of cucumber. In the summer, this is refreshing. It is cleansing to the palate, but most of all, it takes that thirst away when you're out on a hot and summery day. It matches well with the food we prepared today. So why do we do this? Well, it's all about obesity for me, and how do we overcome it? And in my life, I've shared my story about physical activity. Well, I am lifting weights, I am walking, I am doing my stretching. About nutrition, well, my eating plan involves a whole foods-based approach with a low-carb approach to eating. That doesn't necessarily mean I avoid carbs. In fact, I save some room for ice cream today. But what I do is be thoughtful about the meals that I'm eating so that I'm taking in the right amount of calories. I know what calories I need because I had body composition and metabolic testing done. And I'm also using a medication that helps my appetite so that I feel fuller sooner. These are the pillars of obesity treatment: finding out why we retain energy, training ourselves, and working to find solutions to overcome them. So it's always not about focusing on losing weight, it's focusing on the things that make us gain weight and avoiding that. So I can eat well, enjoy food with others, and most of all, enjoy food with you. Because the most important part of this is community. We're doing this together. So, Garrett County, cheers. We can do this.